go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard. Because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one that we're willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win, and the others too. Of leadership is the ability to lead and lead vigorously. For the harsh facts of the matter are that we stand at this frontier at a turning point of history. We must prove all over again to a watching world, as we sit on a most conspicuous stage, whether this nation, conceived as it is, with its freedom of choice, its breadth of opportunity, its range of alternatives, can compete with a single-minded advance of the communist system. Can a nation organized and governed such as ours endure? That is the real question. Have we the nerve and the will? Can we carry through in an age where we will witness not only new breakthroughs in weapons of destruction, but also a race for mastery of the sky and the rain, the ocean and the tides, the far side of space, and the inside of men's minds? That is the question of the new frontier. That is the choice that our nation must make. A choice that lies not merely between two men or two parties, but between the public interest and private comfort, between national greatness and national decline, between the fresh air of progress and the stale, dank atmosphere of normalcy, between dedication or mediocrity. All mankind waits upon our decision. A whole world looks to see what we shall do, and we cannot fail that trust, and we cannot fail to try.
ancient times to the present, people claiming special powers have predicted similar events. Will their most fateful predictions of all soon come to pass? David McCallum is your guide to ancient prophecies. Next.
History is filled with astonishing predictions by seers who claim to foresee future events. Among them, the Egyptians, the prophets in the Bible, Nostradamus, Edgar Cayce. And all of these have at least one vision in common. The specter of an event yet to come that will change the world as we know it forever. The final judgment, Armageddon.
Edgar Cayce, Nostradamus, Jeannie Dixon, they were all fairly accurate, but there's one group of prophets that hit it right on the head. 100% accuracy 100% of the time. And it's the Holy Bible. Most people reject it, but it is the only book that has properly identified the players spelled out in Iron Mountain. Scriptures get right to the point. Whether you're a believer in the Bible or not, you will find its accuracy astounding. Go to now, ye rich men, weep and howl for your miseries that shall come upon you. Your riches are corrupted, and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver is cankered, and the rest of them shall be a witness against you, and shall eat your flesh as it were fire. It is the rich men of the earth that God identifies as the players of the end. Behold, the hire of the laborers who have reaped down your fields, which is of you kept back by fraud, crieth, and the cries of them which have reaped are entered into the ears of the Lord of the Sabbath. This is, of course, a reference to the taxation in which they hold back your wages for taxes, and it is done by fraud. It is done by fraud, essentially, because the laws that were passed were never ratified. Something God knows, but something the vast majority of people do not know. There was a book written, the law that never was, that proves the 16th Amendment was never properly ratified. Ye have condemned and killed the just, and he does not resist you. It is the rich men that kill the people of the earth, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. That no man might buy or sell means total economic control. It is an economic slavery system done through the power of money. The stranger that is within thee shall get up above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low. He shall lend to thee, and thou shalt not lend to him. He shall be the head, and thou shalt be the tail. These lenders come into the country, the nations. They set up central banking, and they take hold of the entire economy of a nation, and they become the bankers that lend to the nation. And it's only the international bankers that lend to nations. They have set themselves up as the chief lending institutions for the nations of the world. In our country, it's the Federal Reserve System, but the Federal Reserve is privately held. James said, "But ye have despised the poor. Do not rich men oppress you and draw you before the judgment seats? Do not they blaspheme that worthy name by which you are called?" In the Psalms it says, "The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against his anointed, saying, Let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us." This is a conspiracy of the super rich. And in Revelation chapter 18 it says, "For thy merchants, the merchants of America, Babylon, were the great men of the earth, for by thy sorceries were all nations deceived. And in her was found the blood of prophets and of saints and of all that was slain upon the earth." God points his finger directly to the root cause of all the problems of Earth. And it started back when the Rothschild banking cartel was originally set up. He's even in your dictionary if you look it up. He was an English banker, and he had a number of sons. And these sons infiltrated the various nations of the world and formed a central banking system by which they took some of the key nations of the world. It starts with Nathan, and he had a son called Nathan who took over England. Anselm took over Germany. Solomon, Austria. Karl, Italy. James, France. These infiltrated these governments, took over the economic systems of these nations, and formed a tremendous banking cartel. And essentially, these people also are the owners of the Federal Reserve System, which came in and took over the United States of America in 1913. So behind them all, of the Federal Reserve, we have the bankers, the Rothschild Bank of London, Rothschild Bank of Berlin, Lazard Brothers, Warburg Banks of Hamburg and Amsterdam, Lehman Brothers, Cohen Loeb Bank of New York, Chase Manhattan Bank, Goldman Sachs Bank of New York, Israel Moses Sarif Banks of Italy. These are the principal stockholders of the Federal Reserve banking system of the United States of America. You see, the Federal Reserve is not federal, it is private. It issues private stock. It is not a federal system. It has only been authorized through Congress to act in a federal capacity, but it itself is a private banking institution. It is the plan of the international banking cartel, as we will prove to you, to slowly gain total control over all mankind via economic controls. And this is a conspiracy that the Bible talks about in Psalm 2. There have been many books written about it. None dare call it conspiracy by Gary Allen. There's many of them. The Rockefeller Files. On this side of the Atlantic, the Rockefeller family has become a moving power of the international banking system. Death Griffin's Fourth Reich of the Rich. Very interesting reading of how the international bankers have done this. The Unseen Hand, an introduction to the conspiratorial view of history. There are many, many people that do not believe in conspiracy theory. However, when you get done with this, you're going to know there was a conspiracy and that it has been implemented. The Conspirators' Hierarchy, the story of the Committee of 300, is another very interesting book which diagrams out essentially how this works. At the top, he claims, is a Committee of 300. And this Committee of 300 runs virtually everything. The United Nations is right there on the top, and the member nations, of course, branch out and take their orders from the United Nations, which gets its orders from the Committee of 300. You branch off from that, and you have Zionism, Communism, Fabianism, Liberalism, Socialism, and also your right-wing parties are controlled by this group. Then you have the Middle East, the kings of Saudi Arabia, the sheiks, whatnot. That is why they are our allies over there. If you come down the line a little more, you'll see British intelligence, and underneath British intelligence comes Interpol, CIA, the Mossad, and other intelligence agencies. Come down a little further, and you have the Royal Institute for International Affairs, which has got the Rhodes, Milner Group, the Round Table groups. They control petroleum, banking, mining, insurance, commerce, and industry. They also control your religious organizations, and a one world government church is what they're gunning for. If you come down a little bit further, you'll find Tavistock, Institute of Human Relations, which is really the psychological arm, and they are the ones who conduct psychological warfare upon the people of the earth to bring about their new world order. Then we have Freemasonry and the other secret societies, and of course down below that we have all of the institutions and the think tanks like Rand, Hudson, etc., etc. And low on the totem pole you see the Trilateral Commission, the Bilderbergers, and the Council on Foreign Relations, which runs essentially the U.S. government and the media in the United States. High on their priorities, of course, is the drug trade, which is the British India company. This is all real. It may seem a shock to you, but it's easy to document. If people would just simply go get the documents, you can prove where all the money goes and how it all fits together. En Route to Global Occupation is an excellent book in which he exposes the New World Order. This is a book by Houston Mullins called The World Order, and he deals essentially in the same thing. There are many, many books out on the market about the New World Order, the ancient plan of secret societies. This is how it's going to work and what it is they're going to do. One of the better books is The Secret Destiny of America by Manly P. Hall, who in our video, The Covenant, we explore the rich men of the earth. And what we wanted to show you here are some quotes that have actually been made by many very important people to prove out that there is, in fact, a conspiracy, and that it is primarily a monetary conspiracy. Those quotes are very real. They are all authentic. And now we're going to run another series for you from the same video we did called The Covenant, because it is very essential that you understand and be aware that this is real, and that the only book, the only sacred book in the entire world that speaks of this is the Bible. And it very accurately pinpoints who is behind it all: the rich men of the earth. That you are looking at have been taken principally from biblical prophecies. However, you should know that the economic part of this, the war part of this, is a creation of the rich men of the earth according to the scriptures. house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you, and if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there ye may be also. Jesus Christ, about 30 A.D. So the rich men forge a conspiracy to take the world. They have an agenda called the Protocols. In the Protocols, they openly said they would use the power of money to accomplish their mission to establish a global slave state. These protocols were found by the government of Bavaria in 1785 by accident. They were being carried by a courier of the Illuminati named Lanz, who was struck by lightning and killed in the town of Ratisbon. During the investigation of his death, the police found secret documents being sent to the Grand Master Grand Orient Masons in Paris. In these documents were the plans for the French Revolution, which occurred as outlined 4 years later. Also found was a document known as the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which outlined the plans for a complete world revolution, destroying all governments through infiltration and gaining control over their finances and by the corruption of all normal forms of social institutions. They would then bring the world to a state of chaos, and out of that chaos would come the New World Order, which was to rule the world by a one world government with one king, Lucifer. The Bavarian government was so astonished at this agenda that they sent copies to every government in Europe to warn them that there was, in fact, a massive conspiracy to destroy them. However, no one paid any attention. The founder of the modern movement, Adam Weishaupt. The name he chose, the Order of the Illuminati. It was founded on May 1st, 1776, which is why the Soviet Union always had a large military May Day celebration to honor the founding father of their Illuminati government. When you think red, think Illuminati. And when you think Illuminati, think Rothschild, who is at the top of the international banking cartels and their affiliated branches, such as our Federal Reserve System. The Illuminati symbol, the Great Pyramid. The mottos, Norvus Ordo Seclorum, which means a new world order. And Ordo ab Chaos, which means out of chaos, order. What follows are actual documents to prove this is real. The report from Iron Mountain is the key to the final Illuminati rich men takeover of America. The symbols that you are looking at are real. They have very, very specific meanings to the occult forces in the world. Annuit Coeptus, announcing the birth of the New World Order, Norvus Ordo Seclorum. The date on the pyramid, 1776. The eye floating on top of the pyramid is the all-seeing eye of Lucifer, the god of this world. In a report from Iron Mountain on the possibility and desirability of peace, you will find reference to the mergings of all the nations. You will find out how the Council on Foreign Relations with their symbol of the rider on the white horse, with the logo which says everywhere. You will see how it all ties together with the Statue of Liberty, a Masonic statue sent to us by a Mason from France who designed it. You will know why it is sitting in the harbor of New York City, the great city, Babylon. You will also understand the forces behind the United States and the formation of the United Nations, which is going to rise, however, in a modified form to be the supreme ruling apparatus in the world. It is no accident that it sits on American soil. Security Council room of the UN has the phoenix, which is the occult symbol for rising up out of the ashes of the old world order. Beware the UN. Beware what is going on in the nation of Israel. It was all planned. You will notice on our seal, we also have the six-pointed star of David in our crest. It all merges together in the mystery of the ages, the mystery of lawlessness, announcing the birth of the New World Order. It can only be understood from the perspective of the Spirit, the perspective of the mystery of the ages, the mystery of God, and the plan God has for mankind, the plan that Jesus Christ has laid out for all of us. In the book, The Great Seal, the symbols and the drawing of the Great Seal of the United States, it says that Roosevelt, like myself, was a 32nd degree Mason. He suggested that the seal be put on the dollar bill. That was stated by Henry Wallace, Secretary of Agriculture. Now, it's very, very interesting how this Great Seal came about and what it really actually does mean to us as Americans. Most of us, of course, just spend our dollar bills. We don't take that much time to look at them. But it's very, very interesting what it means. You see, Europe was the old world, and it was known as the old world. America is known as the New World. The old world order was the European order, and the New World Order is essentially the American order. And it is the destiny of America, according to the occult, to rule the entire world from the secret empire of the Brotherhood of the Quest. And she will rule the world from a great city in the Empire State, New York. That great city, of course, is New York City. Babylon the Great, according to the Bible. The great city Babylon is, of course, New York, and Babylon the Great is the nation. The New World Order is to be run from the United Nations, and it is a shrine of truth for the New World Order, and it is to be run from the New World. New York, actually York gets its name from the York Rites Freemasonry, which is Christian in its essential nature, although occultic Christianity. Two occultic capitals are in America. One is Washington, D.C., which, although you may not realize it, has been laid out, the streets have been laid out to exactly correspond with Masonic symbols. It's very, very interesting how much work was put into laying out Washington, D.C. to mimic Christianity's symbols, but more importantly, It is laid out according to the occult and occult symbols. Our new mint has the pyramid on top of it. And that, of course, is again a reflection of the symbol, which is a Masonic symbol, the symbol of the Illuminati. And in our crest, it's the lineup of the stars that formulates, you will see here, the six-pointed star, the occultic star, actually, of Israel. It's mentioned even in the Old Testament, and it's not mentioned in very good terms by the Lord when he talks about it. He talks about the nation of the star. And this star is embedded within our symbol, our great seal, and the cloud surrounding the star is, of course, the glory. Much of this has to do with what is known as British Israel theology, which claims that we are the new Israel, America is the new Israel, and that we have the right to rule the earth. It's also very interesting how our Great Seal is designed. It has 13 letters in the statement on it. It has 13 arrows. There are 13 olives, 13 leaves, 13 stripes, and 13 stars. On the back side, Annuit Coeptus and Norvis Ordo Seclorum, there are 13 letters on the top, and there are 13 rows of stones, and there are 72 stones total, which are all occultic numbers. There are 32 feathers on one wing and 33 feathers on the other, which represent the 32nd and the 33rd degree of Masonry. The all-seeing eye on top, of course, is the eye of Lucifer, who is the light bringer, the sun god in reality. Illuminati means, in reality, illumination or light. And you will notice that it says on top of our money, Federal Reserve Note. There is a reason why it is a Federal Reserve note. It's because the Federal Reserve took over our system, and it's a note, which is in reality a debt note. All your money you get is debt note, and it's owed to the Federal Reserve System. And again, we come to the Rothschild, and you will see their seal was that of an eagle, and it had 5 arrows representing his 5 sons. And Meyer Rothschild claimed in his writings that the King of the Jews will be the real Pope of the universe, patriarch of an international church. And he was not speaking about Jesus Christ, but in reality was, of course, speaking about the Antichrist. In Isaiah, it says that we have been with child, speaking of Israel, we have been in pain, we have, as it were, brought forth wind. We have not wrought any deliverance in the earth, neither have the inhabitants of the world fallen. They attempted to deliver the earth into their own hands, and they attempted to destroy the nations of the world. It all began many years ago, but Jesus gave us the symbol of the fig tree as knowing when these things were really going to start to happen. His Majesty's government view with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. The fig tree in the parable of Jesus Christ is the nation of Israel, and it is very important. It is the key sign that we were given that would signal the start of the rise of the rich men of the earth and the formation of a new world order. And Iron Mountain is a dead center in the middle of it. Now learn a parable of the fig tree. When his branch is yet tender and puts forth leaves, you know that summer is nigh. So likewise ye, when ye shall see all these things, know it is near, even at the doors. Verily I say unto you, this generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled. It's very important that even if you're a non-believer, Israel is central to the times of the end. And notice that there are no figs on this tree. Jesus said its branch is tender and puts forth leaves, but there is no fruit on it. And in the scriptures, that means that it is a nation born in apostasy. It's not the work of the Spirit. It's essentially a work done through political means. It is the work, according to the scriptures, really, of the rich men of the earth. Apostasy means lack of spirit, not a spiritual work of God. Therefore, Israel is a political work, a work of the rich men. It is not that God is not behind it, because he is. He simply uses the rich men of the earth to accomplish what he has designed to accomplish for the latter days. Fundamentalist Christians are victimized by the mistaken equation of modern political Israel with biblical Israel. The Old Testament unmistakably teaches that no Jewish return, save in righteousness, may be countenanced, and as the true Orthodox insist, it may only be Messiah-led. That's a very important statement. The Zionist state of Israel has no right to exist. The Jews know that the creation of the Jewish state before the coming of the Messiah is blasphemous and heretic, according to the Friends of Jerusalem. The creation of Israel in the Middle East by the rich men of the earth is the key sign that Jesus Christ gave to the world. And that sign means that the end of mankind's probation upon earth was coming to a close. The nation Israel would slowly be established in the Middle East and would live for one generation, which Jesus called this generation. As that generation of man, which is approximately 80 years in length, was traveled, the world would see the creation of a new world order, a system of government unlike anything ever seen on earth. It would be an international super government run from a great city called the Great City Babylon, in a nation called Babylon the Great. As the end of the generation drew near, the nations of the world would come together, and they would forge a uniting of the nations, according to Jesus Christ in Luke, in an attempt to move to an era of peace. The protocols claim the identical thing. This is one of the key things, and it's the one thing you have to remember. In the place of existing governments, we shall place a monster, which shall be called the administration of the super government. Its hands will be outstretched like far-reaching pincers, and will have such an organization at its disposal that it will not be possible to be able to fail in subduing all countries. It is necessary to establish a universal regime of domination, a form of government that will spread out over the whole world. It is expedient for the welfare of the country that the government of the same should be in the hands of one responsible person. The system of government is going to be run by Lucifer. John said, "Little children, it is the last time, and as ye have heard that Antichrist shall come, even now there are many Antichrists, whereby we know that it is the last time." As we run into the last period of time, this is all going to happen. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints, that's the Antichrist apparatus and Antichrist, and to overcome them. And power was given him over all nations and tongues and kindreds. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb, slain from the foundation of the world. The formation of the Zionist state in the Middle East, which was the central sign given by Jesus Christ, and the time code of a generation, signals the end of the age. Israel, along with the slow formation of organizations of the rich men to bring the nations together, such as the League of Nations, and that was established after World War I, the United Nations after World War II, and a modified United Nations coming to full global power after World War III, will fulfill the parameters given to us to identify the United Nations organization as the primary Antichrist apparatus. This organization was recommended by the report from Iron Mountain. Thus, Israel reforming the rapid rise of the United Nations to power with her global peacekeeping operations, and the report from Iron Mountain all converge and speak of a final era of time, which is very short, approximately 7 years, in which the Antichrist government will appear after a major crisis thought by the world to be Armageddon. And a great world leader will then step forward and lead the world into a false millennium. The United States is right in the middle of this Antichrist movement, for New York City is the financial center of the international bankers, and it is the home of the United Nations, which is a front organization of the rich men. The UN is the primary tool they are using to come to full global power. The report from Iron Mountain was ordered by agents of the United States government, which were members of the Council on Foreign Relations, the CFR, which is one of many rich men organizations, set up to steer them into accomplishing their slave state dictatorship of the world. How did they do it? Well, they did it through warfare. World War I, from 1913 to 1919, the plans were laid for a Russian Revolution. They were going to bring in the Federal Reserve System. They were going to start the formation of Israel in the Middle East. In 1920, the League of Nations. Then in 20 and 21, the Royal Institute of International Affairs was formed, based in London. Council on Foreign Relations was formed, and it was based in New York City. These are all part of the Committee of 300. Council on Foreign Relations has the white horse, and the United Nations on the grounds is a person on a horse. You're going to find that the horse is predominant in the scriptures as well as symbolic of the Antichrist. You will notice the olive branch in the rider's horse shaped like a bow, and that is extremely interesting in view of the fact that the Antichrist who rides forth in Revelation chapter 6 has a bow in his hand but no arrows. The Antichrist, you have to remember, is a man of peace, but according to the scripture, he uses warfare to advance his concept of peace. In the Council on Foreign Relations symbol is a man on a white horse. And I saw, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given to him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. A white horse is always symbolic of the good people. And an angel of light appears to the people as being good. And that is exactly what the scripture said, that Satan would appear as an angel of light. Well, 1940 to 1945, we had World War II. Russia was then brought up to full parity with the West, and the United Nations was founded based in New York City, and it was CFR and communists that were instrumental in the formation of the UN Charter and the United Nations. That's a matter of congressional record. Anybody can check it out that doesn't believe it. 1945 to 1954, the international bankers pit America against Russia. They finance both sides in a gigantic arms race, which allows for the development of weapons and weapon systems that will be later used to control the world when they merge the systems together. The systems that will later be used to control the world are all financed by the citizens of each country via sacrifice and taxes, because if they don't opt for a huge military budget, their enemies, they are told, will destroy them. So the United Nations is slowly brought to the forefront as the only hope for mankind. In 1954, the Bilderberger Group forms, and it is one of the most powerful bodies in the elite because of the power structure of its membership. 1955 and beyond, 1968, the Club of Rome is formed, based in New York, The Club of Rome issues a Global 2000 report, and that calls for the rollback of the populations in the world. In fact, that is part of the agenda of Iron Mountain, is the rollback of the populations. 1973, the Trilateral Commission is formed based in New York, and that's a David Rockefeller institution. He was the chairman for many years. Now he's honorary chairman. Their symbol is actually 3 sixes. The United Nations increases activity in affairs of sovereign nations, and the world leaders begin to call for the United Nations to be brought to full power. That's what you're watching on TV with the Bosnian situation developing in the Middle East. 1987 and beyond, the final decade, the Soviet Empire collapses. The last phase of the agenda was the supposed breakup of the Soviet Union. This was called for by Karl Marx as the last phase to take the United States. The peace overtures, such as Glasnost, were designed to lull the Americans and the American military leaders to sleep. The United Nations is a communist organization. Its charter is communist. The Soviet Union elected to use the United Nations as the force to infiltrate the United States as a peacekeeping force, using Russian-trained troops and Russian military vehicles. These forces were brought into America under the noses of the Americans, accomplished under Public Law 87-297, which was passed by Kennedy in 1961. Thus, the Soviet Union is right now conducting a silent invasion of the United States under the guise of UN training. The shutdown of American military bases, with the United Nations taking them over, allows the Illuminati to bring in an entire Soviet and other alien invading forces, train them right in America, and then strike from within when the time is right. The Bible prophets agree. America is to be infiltrated and then destroyed from within. Once America has fallen to the rich men, the complete agenda outlined in Iron Mountain will be implemented in its entirety. Shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines, and pestilences, and earthquakes in divers places. From Iron Mountain can be taken from many large libraries. With the introduction material was written by Leonard Lewin, who interviewed and made contact with John Doe, the person who actually wrote it. In our particular library here, you can see it was, the last time it was checked out was May in 1968. Not many people know anything about it. But the importance of the Iron Mountain Report is beyond belief. And they sent a cover letter with it attached to the report of the Special Study Group, and it was to consider the problems involved in the contingency of a transition to a general condition of peace, and 2, to recommend procedures for dealing with this contingency. It was dated 30 September 1966. problems are we, the government, going to face by the American people when we disarm them? If a transition to enforced peace is planned by the elite, then the waging of war is also a planned activity and is carried out by the rich men who have an ultimate goal in mind. This means that wars do not just happen, but are instigated by the hidden powers to bring about a specific and a planned result. The Bible would agree. From whence come wars and fightings among you? Come they not hence, even of your lusts that war in your members? Ye lust and have not. Ye kill and desire to have and cannot obtain. Ye fight and war, yet ye have not, because you ask not. War then has a cause, lust. The love of money, the Bible says, is the root of all evil. Now, the word love means avarice, covetousness, the love of money. It's not money itself that is evil. It is the love of money. And the word avarice means insatiable greed for riches, inordinate desire to gain and to hoard wealth. It's a form of insanity. It becomes an obsession. Go to now, ye rich men, weep and howl for your miseries that shall come upon you. And it says that ye have heaped together treasure in the last days, there in verse 3, the last part. They are heaping together all their treasures. In other words, they hoard all the gold, silver, diamonds, money, stocks, everything. It becomes an obsession with power. And that's exactly what avarice is. Ye have heaped together treasure for the last days. It's greed. Insatiable greed. These people cannot get enough money and they cannot get enough power. If we go into some of the more ancient writings about the world revolution and the plans to upset all the nations of the world, soon we will start organizing great monopolies, reservoirs of colossal wealth. That was found in the protocols. We established this new aristocracy on the wealth of which we had control. This whole system is one of money and power, and it's based on wealth of which the inner elite had total control over. We must improve and regulate the state monopolies which we have established, and thereby prepare for state monopolization. Now, Lenin was a mere runner for the Illuminati. He was a front for the Illuminati. We advocate a merciless dictatorship. And that's exactly what the protocols have to say. They're going to kill anybody that doesn't go along with it. The goal is a worldwide dictatorship using the power of money to establish it, to bring all peoples of the world into a system of one world government. The plan has been established for many years. It was written down in the protocols. It's in the Communist Manifesto, the Humanist Manifestos 1 and 2, and the New Age plan, and they are all documented, and you can track them down usually in large libraries and read it for yourself. They all have the same essential aspects to the plan, and that is the toppling of our present governmental systems and the bringing in of a new world order. The plan uses the power of money to gain control, and that is why the Bible places the blame squarely on the rich men of the earth. And through his policy also, he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. And he shall also stand up against the prince of princes. And I saw when the Lord opened one of the seals, and I heard, as it were, the noise of thunder, one of the four beasts saying, Come and see. And I saw, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat on him had a bow, and a crown was given unto him, and he went forth conquering and to conquer. This is a direct reference to the Antichrist. This whole system, as we said, started in 1776. Adam Weishaupt of the Illuminati. There have been many, many books written about this that date back in the 1800s, 1700s. Proofs of a Conspiracy, written in 1797. This is not something that's new. There have been many, many people that have been aware of this conspiracy to destroy the nations of the world for quite a long time. Here's another one written in 1798 called the Anti-Christian Conspiracy, or the Conspiracy of the Antichrist. The View of the New England Illuminati, Destroying the Religion and Government of the United States. Published in 1799. The Science of Government, founded on natural law, Clinton Roosevelt. 1841. The Communist Manifesto, 1848. Philip Drew, Administrator, The Story of Tomorrow. Tells you the actual inside agenda of the rich men of the earth and how they are going to set it up. 1919 it was published. You will find that the Warbogs were instrumental in many, many things. If you dig into their ancient documents, here's a Federal Reserve banknote. That's a stock certificate. If you will look at the Federal Reserve and who is on the boards, who the rich men are, you will find CFR just about beside every single name. CFR is the controller of the American economy, the American military, and of course the people on the monetary boards of all the major banks are all Council on Foreign Relations, or they are Trilateral Commission people. They always go overseas, or a good share of them do, to the Bilderberg meetings that are usually held in Europe, where they pick up their running orders for the coming year. One of the few newspapers that reports on it is the Spotlight publication. A lot of people do not like the Spotlight. They feel they're anti-Semitic, which they really are not, if you view it properly, they are America first. We're not sure what the actual agenda is of these people, but much of what they report on is very, very true. And we recommend them strictly for the intelligence value of their publications. If you wish to disregard their religious slants, which by and large they keep out of. But as you can see here, all your major banks, your manufacturers, Hanover directors, they're all CFR, or the TC stands for the Trilateral Commission. How was the group formed in Iron Mountain? It started with some of the new people who came in with the Kennedy administration, mostly, I think, with McNamara, Bundy, and Rusk. They were impatient about many things. Well, McNamara, Bundy, and Rusk were connected to the Council on Foreign Relations. In fact, Council on Foreign Relations, since its inception, has infiltrated and gained control over the United States government. The CFR has openly stated it wishes to place America under the United Nations dictatorship. Then they go on to say, but what helped most to get it moving were the big changes in military spending that were being planned, plants being closed, relocations, and so forth. Most of it wasn't made public until much later. You see, this has always been planned. This was not something that just came about. The Cold War and the collapse of the Cold War, so-called, were planned. All of this had been planned by the elite, proving the American people have no say whatsoever over the direction of American policy in any area. This remark proves the conspiracy of the rich men found in Psalm 2, verses 1 through 3, and it is true. This is a hidden conspiracy, and it moves forward to the goal of one world government at any cost. And it does not matter who is elected to office, for it will not be stopped. The phase down of the American military machine was begun in 1961 under John Kennedy in preparation for America going under the United Nations. They mean business. This has been planned for hundreds upon hundreds of years. The great-grandchildren of the men who planned this will be the inheritors. That's how long-range this is. They knew they could do it if they just did it right. And Public Law 87-297 is the big finding here, the movement to do it legally. Because of the unusual circumstances surrounding the establishment of this group and in view of the nature of its findings, we do not recommend that this report be released for publication. It is our affirmative judgment that such action would not be in the public interest. They wish to keep this, or kept this report, totally and completely secret. They felt that a crisis in public confidence, which untimely publication of this report might be expected to provoke. One thing you will find about evil is it always likes to do its dirty work in private. The hidden reasons for war. Wars, according to the Iron Mountain Report, are not fought for the reasons we would think. Indeed, they claim, they are fought for invisible reasons. They are not fought for the most common items you would think of, defense of a nation, putting down an enemy. They have other, much more deeply and much more hidden reasons, according to Iron Mountain. We're going to find out that one of the primary reasons for war is technological advancement. War is good for the nation's economy. It spurs economic growth. Standards of living generally improve, believe it or not, during war, at least for those that are not directly involved in it. Incorrect assumption that war as an institution is subordinate to the social systems it is believed to serve. Few social cliches are so unquestioningly accepted as the notion that war is an extension of diplomacy. It is an incorrect assumption that war as an institution is subordinate to the social systems it is believed to serve. The point is that the cliché is not true, and the problems of transition are indeed substantive rather than merely procedural. Although war is used as an instrument of national and social policy, the fact that a society is organized for any degree of readiness for war supersedes its political and economic structure. War itself is the basic social system. That's a very important statement. War itself is the basic social system within which other secondary modes of social organization conflict or conspire. In other words, war itself is the glue of civilizations, and it is what holds nations together. It is the system which has governed most human societies of record as it is today. A system that holds all your nations together, according to Iron Mountain. Wars are not caused by international conflicts of interest. Proper logical sequence would make it more often accurate to say that war-making societies require and thus bring about such conflicts. The capacity of a nation to make war expresses the greatest social power it can exercise. War-making, active or contemplated, is a matter of life and death on the greatest scale, subject to social control. It should therefore hardly be surprising that the military institutions in each society claim its highest priorities. Well, that means basically what it says. It means that the military budgets are going to receive all the money and all the attention and all the research and development will be orientated towards the defenses or the aggressive nature of a society. But there are other, broader, more profoundly felt functions of war in modern societies. It is these invisible or implied functions that maintain war readiness as the dominant force in our societies. Therefore, the war machine itself is the key element in our societies today, according to Iron Mountain. In the case of military waste, there is indeed a larger social utility. It derives from the fact that the wastefulness of war production is exercised entirely outside the framework of the economy of supply and demand. As such, it provides the only critically large segment of the total economy that is subject to complete and arbitrary central control. From the long-established war economy and without its frequent eruption into large-scale shooting war, most of the major industrial advances known to history, beginning with the development of iron, could never have taken place. Weapons technology structures the economy. Nothing is more ironic or revealing about our society than the fact that highly destructive war is a very progressive force in it. War production is progressive because it is production that would not otherwise have taken place. It is not so widely appreciated, for example, that the civilian standard of living rose during World War II. One of the largest benefits we derive from war is the area of technology. War spurns civilization on, or the various countries on, to produce more and better weapons with which to liquidate their so-called enemy. And this then spurns on research and development. And as you can see on the screen, we moved rapidly into the modern age during World War II. We started out with some rather obsolete aircraft, and before the war was over in 1945, we had developed a number of aircraft and aircraft weapon systems that were quite advanced. We developed the nuclear bomb. The jets came soon after. That's a B-52 lifting off. And since that time, we have made tremendous strides in our aircraft and aviation technology, which has many spin-offs. The space program, technology likewise. That's where a good share of everything you use in your home, all the modern conveniences that you have, are actually spin-offs from the research and development that goes into the technology of war. Is going to be one of the key instruments used by the New World Order to bring the world into total subjection. And its variants, vertical lift takeoff jet aircraft. Fighter and a stealth bomber are high technology weapons. The unfortunate thing about technology and the nature of man is that as soon as the technology is developed, it is turned against man for control. And because man's heart is basically evil, according to the scriptures, whatever technology is developed for war and controlling people, and generally not for the good of people. Ultimately, any weapon that is developed will be used. Then the necessary waste, it operates outside the normal economic supply and demand system. It creates artificial demand. It is arbitrary in that the defense departments of the various nations can order up any materials they want, and it's good from that way for the economy. The waste of money outside the system acts as a counterbalance to the system. It acts as a growth factor. It is a progressive for research and development of weapon system, which spurs along with it all kinds of technological advances. Defense spending per se might be countenanced on economic grounds alone as a stimulator for the national metabolism. It has that much impact. If there is, as I suspect there is, a direct relation between a stimulus of large defense spending and a substantially increased rate of growth of gross national product, it quite simply follows that defense spending per se might be countenanced on economic grounds alone as a stimulator. You see, that's the way it works. All right, now there are other functions of war. That's just one economical function of war. There is also major political functions of war. A nation is a group of people organized together with a common goal and a national identity. The nation has an outlook or an attitude of how it will deal with other nations. We call it foreign policy. A nation's foreign policy can have no substance if it lacks the means of enforcing its attitude on other nations. In other words, it would not matter what we believed about Bosnia or any other nation if we had no means of enforcing our dictates. War is itself the defining element of any nation's existence vis-a-vis any other nation. War then equals nations, and peace equals no nations. And that's an important finding of the Iron Mountain Report. The elimination of war implies the elimination of national sovereignties and the traditional nation state. In other words, if we move into an era of peace, and the United Nations is an instrument of peace, so it says, then we must give up our national sovereignties and our constitutions. The war system not only has been essential to the existence of nations as independent political entities, but has been equally indispensable to their stable internal political structure. Without it, the war system, no government has ever been able to obtain its ability, we should say, the right to rule. It has to have a reason to rule over its people. And that reason is war. It's very, very interesting how they have set this entire thing up. The possibility of war provides a sense of external necessity without which no government can remain in power. The organization of a society for the possibility of war is its principal political stabilizer. It is what kept the Soviet Union together, according to Iron Mountain, was the constant threat of war. And what held America together was the constant threat of war of the Soviet Union. Now you have to understand, this is a report of the rich men. However, much of what Iron Mountain has to say is basically accurate. The basic authority of the modern state over its people resides in its war powers. Therefore, a substitute for the war system must be found in order to control the people and provide stability and legitimacy of government. Obviously, if the war machine is discarded, new political machinery would be needed at once. What they're saying is they have to have a substitute for the war machine, or they won't be able to control the people. Until the substitute for wars, is developed, the continuance of the war system must be assured to maintain the stability of its internal organization of power. Now you have to realize what is being said here. They are going to keep wars going because they feel this is what gives them their power and their rights to control. So therefore keep war until all substitutes are in place and running, so we don't lose our rulership. They don't want to lose their ability to rule. So they're going to keep killing people by starting all these wars and conflicts until they have the ultimate machinery in place to replace the war machine. What substitutes of war are there? Well, it must be a universal threat of equal magnitude as that of world war. It has to be a major threat to the population. It also has to be credible. It must be accepted by the vast majority of the population. They have to believe it. Credibility, in fact, says Iron Mountain, lies at the heart of the problem of developing a political substitute for war. We must emphasize that one must be found of credible quality and magnitude if a transition to peace is ever to come about without social disintegration. You're going to find out that what Iron Mountain really is a method of control. That's all it's interested in, is controlling the people. It is our more probable in our judgment that such a threat will have to be invented rather than developed from some unknown conditions. In other words, they're going to manufacture a crisis. If war is the basic reason for having nations, then a lack of war, called peace, means the destruction of nation states. If nations are to be destroyed, then a replacement governmental system must take their place. Because nations are localized units of government, the replacement government must be global, or a world government system. You see, we are going to transition from localized governments, nations and states, over to a system of absolute worldwide control. So it's a war for peace agenda. And it began with World War I and the League of Nations. The Organization of Nations of the World, the League of Nations, was to promote world peace and cooperation that was created by the Treaty of Versailles. The United States refused to join the League of Nations, and it was also a creation of the rich men of the earth. But the American people were smart enough not to give up their sovereignty to join this. Then Hitler came along in World War II.
This is the Security Council chamber, and the room itself is a gift of Norway. So the furniture, the decoration, the mural were given by the Norwegian government. Now, this mural represents a phoenix arising from his own ashes, like in the Greek mythology. At the bottom of the painting, you see agonies, destructions of World War II represented. Arising from the ashes of the war, you see this bird symbolizing the foundation of the United Nations. And towards the top, symbols of peace, happiness, justice, hope, freedom, which are all symbols of the work of the organization. As you walked through the visitors' gates a few minutes ago, you have entered an international zone which has become the home of 159 countries. And actually, this all started back in 1945, during the last days of the Second World War, when the representatives of 50 countries met for a conference in San Francisco. And that's where they signed the UN Charter for the first time. And the document basically provides three major goals for the organization. The first one is to maintain international peace and security. The second goal is to promote development of all economic and social fields. And finally, to promote respect of human rights for all peoples.
The John Birch Society published a video called The United Nations, the Peace Dove Unmasked. Very interesting video. We're going to include part of it, but we recommend highly you contact them and purchase it and study that video intently.
almost 30 years, Americans have been conditioned to accept the United Nations as humanity's savior. The propaganda barrage began long before the birth of the UN in 1945. So successful has this campaign been that virtually no major American political official of the last decade has dared to challenge the UN for fear of committing political suicide. While most people involved in the campaign to sell the American public on world government were idealistically, if mistakenly motivated, others knew exactly what they were doing. The communists have always viewed world government as a stepping stone to world communism. Joseph Stalin, in his book Marxism and the National Question, laid down a three-pronged blueprint for bringing the nations into a world government and then using this as a mechanism for Soviet world domination. Stalin's plan was, first, bring all nations together into a single world system of economy. Second, force the advanced countries to pour prolonged financial aid into the underdeveloped countries. Third, to divide the world into regional groups as a transitional stage to establishing a world dictatorship of the proletariat.
Stalin was an agent of the Illuminati. His book, Marxism and the National Question, follows the Bible prophets exactly.
Bring all nations together into a single world system of economy.
The stranger that is within thee shall get above thee very high, and thou shalt come down very low. He shall lend to thee, and thou shalt not lend to him. He shall be the head, thou shalt be the tail. And that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name.
Second, force the advanced countries to pour prolonged financial aid into the underdeveloped countries.
A sword is upon their horses, said Jeremiah, and upon their chariots, and upon all the mingled people that are in the midst of her. This is America, Babylon, and they shall become as women. A sword is upon her treasuries, and they shall be robbed. And this is exactly how the communists are doing it. They're making us fund all these smaller countries through the International Monetary Fund, which American taxpayers support.
To divide the world into regional groups as a transitional stage to establishing a world dictatorship of the proletariat.
Thus he said, the fourth beast shall be the fourth kingdom upon earth, which shall be diverse from all kingdoms, and shall devour the whole earth, and shall tread it down, and break it in pieces. A word study on that means that it divides up the earth, and it forms regional arrangements, which is exactly what the UN Charter calls for in Chapter 8. Once established, the United Nations begins to show its true colors to the world. And those colors are not very pleasant. And we will now go back to Iron Mountain and tie this together to what is happening in America today. Remember that the objective of the report was to determine accurately and realistically the nature of the problems that would confront the United States if and when a condition of permanent peace would arise. This is the situation to confront America. The rulers, remember, wanted to know, how can we control the American people if we take it off the war footing, which they claimed was the glue of the nations, and we came into an era of peace. If and when a condition of permanent peace should arise, peace equals world socialism. We have to get rid of our Constitution. Our constitutional republic has to go because we are to be merged into a socialistic system, and it is to draft a program for dealing with this contingency. That was the whole nature of Iron Mountain, was to draft up the program, which is the agenda. How do we control the people of America if we move to an era of peace? 1961, Public Law 87-297 was passed, paving the way for the United States to go into the United Nations and to disarm. Public Law 87-297 is the foundation upon which this entire thing lays. It violates the clear intent of the Constitution, our right to bear arms, calling for the disarming of all Americans. This was to be done by a period of gradual disarmament and then building up the United Nations with a powerful standing army. The evidence suggests a CFR Trilateral Commission Bilderberg connection, the rich men of the earth, the merchants of Babylon, and the killers of the just, according to the Bible. The report concerns itself with a globalist agenda, and the conclusions reached have been advanced by these groups. The Committee of 300, the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, Bilderbergers, Royal Institute of International Affairs, Tavistock, Club of Rome, and the United Nations, etc., have all advanced in one way or another a globalist agenda in which the United States is to lose her sovereignty, her constitution, and go under a UN charter. These hearings even begin to take place long ago, back in 1950s. There was a hearing in the Congress about such a proposition as going under a world government. To provide a true world government through adoption of a world government constitution. They wanted to replace the constitution that we have in this country, the very instrument that has made us a great nation. That universal peace is the prerequisite for the pursuit of that goal. And from the competitive anarchy of national states, therefore the age of nations must end and the era of humanity begin. This is a constant theme of the communists and the Illuminati. They have to get rid of the nations, and of course they're after the United States because they want the United States military to accomplish what it is they're going to do. Regulation, limitation, and balanced reduction of all armed forces and all armaments. That is the actual definitions, and all means exactly that. It means the guns in your closet. All weapons are to go under this situation, and that's why you're having the attack you do on the Second Amendment at the present time. Under this agreement, the United States and the Russian armies are to be brought down, and as they are brought down, the United Nations peacekeeping forces will be brought up to full global power. We will retain only internal security forces. That comes from the documents right out of the State Department. This one, Freedom from War, the United States Program for General and Complete Disarmament in a Peaceful World. This can only be achieved through a progressive strengthening of international institutions under the United Nations and by creating a United Nations peace force to enforce the peace as the disarmament process proceeds. You see, peace can only be achieved through the progressive strengthening of international institutions under the United Nations. Everything is to go under the United Nations. By creating a United Nations police force to enforce the peace. And that's what the Bible said, and through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints, and to overcome them. And power was given him over all kindreds, and tongues, and nations. And all that dwell upon the earth shall worship him, whose names are not written in the book of life of the Lamb slain from the foundation of the world. The disbanding of all national armed forces, and the prohibition of their reestablishment in any form whatsoever other than those required to preserve internal order and for contributions to a United Nations peace force. This is to get rid of all the nations, and it is to come to a point where no state could have the military power to challenge the progressively strengthened United Nations peace force, and all international disputes would be settled according to the agreed principles of international conduct. That means the American people would not be able to fight the United Nations. They would become the slaves to it and do as they were told, or they would simply be killed. And it was given unto him to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and power was given him over all kindreds and tongues and nations. It is going to happen, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters in the Lord, because the Bible says it's going to happen. In reality, the loss of the United States Constitution and us going under the United Nations through high treason by our government officials was ordained of the Lord, and it is part of the punishments of the Lord upon this nation for rejecting him and rejecting his word, because he clearly warned us this was coming. This is constantly updated. H.R. 1495, Arms Control and Disarmament Amendments Act of 1989. They constantly are updating this. But basically, under the Bill of Rights, our Amendment number 2, or Article 2, right to bear arms, a well-regulated militia, being necessary for the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now that is a right granted to us. It is not a right the government can take away because they happen to feel like we should go under a globalist society. The only way a people can remain free is to hold in their power the weapons necessary to secure their free state. This amendment deals with the internal security of the United States from its own government. It's not there to go hunting. It's not there to go target practicing. It's not there just to have a weapon for self-defense. That amendment is in there to prevent the government of the United States from becoming a dictatorship by treason or by betrayal of the Constitution, which is the highest law of the land. Now, in order to merge the United States into the United Nations requires a total betrayal of the Constitution, because it guarantees the people a free state. And under the United Nations, there is nothing free about it. The United Nations is a communist, illuminist, Masonic world dictatorship with no freedoms, and hence they must get the guns to eliminate our free state and our free nation. That's why the attack on the Second Amendment. We'll get into this a little later on in this video program. Iron Mountain is in reality a report on how to circumvent the Constitution. It is a document of treason couched in innocuous titles and words. It's a very, very deadly document. However, it is being adapted. The guidelines given by the government for the Iron Mountain report: 1. Military-style objectivity. 2. Avoidance of value assumptions. 3. Inclusion of all relevant data. It is to be immoral. It is just like a computer is amoral. It simply deals in facts and data. It does not have any mercy. It has no compassion, right or wrong, good or evil. This viewpoint of government objectivity began to surface after World War II. It is a report on the handling of men, women, children, and babies on the basis of herd or animal management, and it is without regard to any morality. It reduces people to objects. It reduces all humans to non-entities with no rights of self-determination, with no rights granted by the Creator, and with no rights under a constitution. The Constitution under this whole system is being canceled. Here's the resolution to strengthen the United Nations peacekeeping role. This is not a joke. This is actually happening. They want to establish an international criminal court, SJ 32. This is all happening. SJ 69. To implement Agenda 21 of the Rio Conference. That was the United Nations. Reagan espouses World Army. The UN Army is planned. Clinton approves the UN Army. All of our leaders have approved this UN One World Army. And it is the final beast power which is going to take the entire world.